Howdy, and welcome to the FortCast, your local podcast reporting on all things Fort Worth and Tarrant County. We will be covering the local news, government and politics, and stories that are most worth your time from November 1st to November 9th. Yeah, so I think we should start out with some introductions. Like I said, my name is Jonah. I use they, he pronouns, and I'll be covering our life and culture section. I was, born and raised in Fort Worth. I just graduated from TCU in May. I studied philosophy and political science, and now I work at JBJ Management, which is allowing us to make this podcast about Fort Worth, which I'm very excited about.
Awesome. My name is Lauren. I am a recent Baylor graduate in May as well. I work as the social media specialist here at JBJ Management, and I am new to the Dallas area, so excited to have this podcast to explore Dallas and Fort Worth and the surrounding areas of that county. And yeah, I already said at JBJ Management. So yeah, it's like bad ending, but Austin, over to you.
My name is Austin Hood. I am the government relations manager here at JBJ. I'm also the resident old man here. I'm 30. I graduated with a political science degree at UT in Austin, and I was born and raised in Arlington, so I kind of split the difference between Dallas and Fort Worth here.
All right, cool. And we don't want to forget our wonderful tech man, John. John's behind the camera. Everyone say thank you, John.
Ooh,
thank you.
Yeah, John.
Round of applause. Yeah. Okay, cool. So cast might change a little bit for this podcast, but I'll always be here. Austin will usually be here. Lauren might be here sometimes.
A little bit. I'll make cameos from time to time.
Yes.
Awesome.
So awesome. We will continue to make introductions as this podcast evolves. So please stick with us.
On to the news.
Excellent. Lauren.
So I will be covering the local Fort Worth news, and the story that I've chosen to be a big one, that's a big one for this week, is about the high-speed rail transit between Dallas and Fort Worth. So I'm going to give a little bit of background on that big topic. So the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex has a lot of diversity, life, and culture, but the downside of living in such a bustling city life is that there's going to be a lot of traffic, a lot of congestion. Trying to get from Dallas to Fort Worth or vice versa can take, in rush hour especially, can take upwards of an hour most likely. And it can just put a lot of stress on people's day-to-day lives. So to battle this daily stress, the North Central Texas Council of Governments and their engineering firm that is helping them, HNTB, have looked into the idea of creating high-speed transit between these two cities. So the proposal that they're putting out is to have this high-speed transit along Interstate 30, which they've deemed the least disruptive and the most direct route between Fort Worth and Dallas. And there'd be stops in Arlington as well. So shout out to your hometown,
Yes,
Austin.
definitely needed, especially for all of the attractions there in Arlington.
Yes, you know how busy and crazy downtown driving can get. So they've looked at over 40, I think around 43 routes, and they said Interstate 30 is most likely going to be the best one. They've also narrowed down the technology they would be using to produce this project. And the two options they have right now are high-speed rail or Hyperloop. So I'll give a little bit of background on those briefly. High-speed rail trains are very common in Europe and Asia right now. If you've ever been over there and been on a train, you know kind of how they function. They reach speeds of about 200 miles per hour, just zipping around. So they're very good. The other technology that they're looking into is the Hyperloop, which is a newer technology very much popularized by SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, which will send pods through low friction tubes at speeds of up to 650 miles per hour. And just to clarify, between going between those cities, it's not going to be 650 miles an hour from start to finish. If that's the route they go, that's just the max speed the technology will take. You got to have that safe acceleration, deceleration, onboarding, all of that. So, yeah.
And I did look up the speed of sound, and that's 767 miles per hour. So not quite there, but
yeah. So we're not going to be sending anyone through the sound barrier. This is just, it's on the table.
I was just thinking yesterday, stuck in traffic, I would love to be able to teleport.
Honestly, because there's so many things in Fort Worth.
This might be it.
I live east of Dallas, just like interjecting myself into the story here. So to get to Fort Worth in rush hour, I have to go all the way into Dallas from Mesquite, through it, and out to Fort Worth. This is kind of a cool idea for the commuters outside of Dallas like myself. On that, this project is still about 15 to 20 years from being a completed work. There's a lot to do construction wise, design wise, getting that approval, all of that. It's still in talks. They've already hosted about 130 public meetings so that they want people who are going to be affected by this or who would just be able to use this to be aware of it from the start. They don't want to be like, wait, what the heck? Like, why have I not heard about it? So very cool to be involving people like that. So this project wants people to be able to commute from Dallas, Fort Worth, vice versa, in under 20 minutes from wherever they're trying to go. So that's pretty fantastic, especially if you've ever had to do that long commute, you know how crazy it can be. So just to think of that, in under 20 years, we could be able to zip all over the place in under 20 minutes around the Metroplex is pretty cool. And it's a project worth keeping up with. Yeah, that's
anything
it.
to avoid I-30.
Honestly,
rush hour would be
or
great.
Any of the roads, but like 30 is my commute. And I'm like, if I don't ever have to go on it, I mean, you got my vote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But
I'd love to see stats on the environmental impact as well for that.
For sure. Definitely worth keeping up with as this project goes. And as they have those meetings, I'm sure that's something that people are going to be bringing to their attention. I'm sure they've been thinking about it too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd be interested to also see how TRE is being involved or not involved in that kind of project.
Yep.
As well as the terminuses both in Dallas and in Fort Worth. To be able to connect to DART would be huge. And then there are a few TexRail and TRE.
Yeah, TRE and TexRail.
In Fort Worth. So.
Right.
Absolutely. Awesome. So that's it for the news section. So passing it over to the next one.
All right. Thank you, Lauren. Austin, you're up next.
Yes. Politics. Let's talk about the bond election that happened last Tuesday, November 2nd.
Big things going down.
Yes. It was a bond election on an off year. So, of course, turnout is not that great, less than 10% of registered voters. But those that did had some messages for their local governments. Looking at Fort Worth ISD first, they had 4 bond proposals, A, B, C, and D. A was the major one that had a $1.2 billion proposed bond package for improving all middle schools within the district. This is the largest bond package that Fort Worth has ever had.
Wow.
And so this single one did pass by just 57 votes out of more than 24,000.
That's close.
It's a very slim
close.
margin.
Oh, yeah. It was enough that even after the polls had closed, they had to go through all of the absentee ballots because there were over 300 more of those. And so the margin of error was there such that they had to look at all of those to see if that was going to change. So even that low slim passage rate.
Do you know why it was so controversial? Like why it was such a close turnout?
It looks like that academics have been a big focus in the district for a while. And so I think that the voters were saying that, hey, this is something that, we need to focus on just this because the other 3 that failed to pass all dealt with fine arts facilities, athletics facilities, and stadiums.
Okay.
So stadiums might be a little clearer why that failed since Texas has had a lot of large stadiums that maybe didn't need to be quite as big as they are.
Right.
But even the repudiations for both the athletics facilities and fine arts facilities show that the citizens of Fort Worth ISD want to refocus on just academics. So, and to put this in a little bit of perspective, the last bond package that passed was in 2017, redoing all of their high schools. And that passed by over 70%.
Oh, wow. Big difference.
Yes. So big difference from just 4 years later.
Yeah. And then, when you think about how big Fort Worth is, I mean, it's a huge city. So the fact that 54, 57 votes, that's insane.
Was that slim of a margin.
Yeah.
And it's important to note that Fort Worth ISD is a majority minority district. And even though the city of Fort Worth is not.
That's very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then also the Tarrant County bond election happened as well. Prop A was dealing with transportation and Prop B was for a new building for the district attorney. Prop A passed by 65% to 35%, but Prop B failed 45 to 55%. So I think, again, that shows that Tarrant County residents would like to focus on transportation. I think that we all know living here in the Metroplex that it is a big concern with, a lot more toll roads have gone up and we need to really focus on, the actual existing infrastructure that we have. And then additionally, maybe we're looking at this and during this time and climate, even though our economy is improving, not everybody's personal finances are improving. And so I think it shows that the citizens are wanting us to really focus on the core tenets of government.
Right. So the bond package that did pass, what is going to happen with that? What is that money going to do?
So this for the Tarrant County one. So this is all for all road, highway, street, and bridge construction improvement. So it looks like these are going to be existing projects that have already been pre-planned. And here's the funding mechanism for them. And this is $400 million for this. These things are going to slowly be awarded by the county to different construction firms.
Okay.
As the years go on, these are usually in 5-year cycles. So you would see this money be used over the next 5 years.
Okay.
Wow. It's a lot going on.
Yeah, so that's a
busy election.
Lots of bond money being passed and some clear direction to the Tarrant County Commissioners and to the Fort Worth School Board.
Great.
All right. Thank you very much, Austin. Cool. Now we're moving on to our life and culture section. So that is me. November 1st marked the beginning of Native American Heritage Month, and this is a period of remembrance that started in October of 1976.
Wow.
It was proclaimed Native American Awareness Week by President Ford, and it was amended in 1990 by President George H.W. Bush, who proclaimed the month of November as National American Indian Heritage Month. And finally, in 2009, it was President Obama who named it National Native American Heritage Month. So I wanted to read a quick quote from Bush's proclamation statement from 1990. So according to the Department of Defense, he stated that our Constitution affirms a special relationship between the federal government and Indian tribes, and despite a number of conflicts, inequities, and changes over the years, our unique government-to-government relationship has endured. So I thought that was a very interesting statement because the special relationship that Bush mentions is not exactly the good kind of special. So during the Revolutionary War, a lot of Native American tribes actually fought with the British. And after the war ended, there was a practice of the U.S. government making treaties with Native American tribes, but that practice was fraught with difficulties and issues. So the National Geographic Society has stated that most treaties signed between the government and tribes were not officially approved or recognized by the appropriate officials on either side. So these issues have remained unresolved. Native land was taken without consent or compensation to Native peoples, and discrimination and violence against Native Americans continues to this day. So since it is Native American Heritage Month, I did a little research I wanted to share with y'all today about a few Native Texas tribes, as well as some Fort Worth history.
Oh, yeah. Cool. I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, this is going to be great.
Yeah. So super exciting. I got this information from the Bullock Museum website. The Bullock Museum is the official Texas State History Museum located in Austin, Texas. I've never been. Have you been?
Yes, it's right next to UT, and in between that and the Capitol. It's a very, very cool museum.
Awesome.
So if you get the chance, definitely go to it.
Cool. That's really cool. Awesome. All right. So Texas tribes. First up is the Karankawa. So the Karankawa were the first tribe that came in contact with explorer Cabeza de Vaca in 1528. So the Bullock Museum's information is based on primary resources and first-person accounts, which I thought was super cool, and I think very important for the information that they provided. So there was a quote. They said that the Karankawa fed and sheltered Cabeza de Vaca and his companions, but the Karankawa responded less favorably to colonizers. So other historical accounts that I found said some variation of the story that Devaka was kept as a prisoner or a slave by this tribe. But when you look at the museum's information, the Karankawa and many other Native American tribes did not act defensively or offensively. They didn't act defensively or
Offensively.
Yes.
I got you.
They weren't outwardly aggressive at all until their land and way of life was threatened. So when exploration turned into colonization and conversion with the religious and missionaries, that's when it became a problem. So the Karankawa, they survived until 1858, when their members who had survived Spanish colonizers, Comanche attacks, and European conflicts and diseases, their remaining members were sadly massacred by a genocidal group led by Juan Nepomuceno Cortina, and that destroyed their tribe, sadly.
1858?
Yes.
And here in Texas, or do you know if that was like also
it was in
into
Texas.
Mexico? Okay.
Wow.
Yes. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I remember this is like coming back to me now, like 7th grade history, in the Texas history, and I was like, all right, I do kind of remember that tribe now, and so I was like, okay, haven't heard about it recently, and I think that's why.
Yeah, because I mean that was a very long time ago now at this point, but
Right.
yeah,
it was interesting. Did you know if that the person that led the attack was a Texan, or I guess at that point, let's see, 1845. Yeah, so that would have been an American at that point, or if he was.
It might have been. I don't know. The
It'd
nationality.
be interesting to look up.
Yeah.
Research for after.
Yeah, but more coming on Texas and the Anglo population later. So the second tribe, though, the Kato tribe, was a large tribe with established agricultural cities that expanded across America, and they had a very expansive and successful trading network, which I thought was super cool, because I think there's a common stereotype that people think, oh, Native American tribes are like nomadic and they hunt and stuff, but these people were pretty stationary. So their city populations were made of several hundred people, and their leadership was matriarchal as well.
Oh,
yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So the Bullock Museum, scratch that. Okay.
And was that CADDO?
Yes.
Okay.
CADDO, the Kato.
Okay, like for Cato Lake.
okay.
Out y'all remember this? The only natural lake in Texas.
Oh,
I grew up not in
interesting.
Texas, so I didn't have Texas State history, so I get a pass. I was like, I don't know.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Where's that located?
That's on the Louisiana border.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, that's about where, that sounds about right.
Okay, yeah, far east Texas,
Geographically.
and that makes sense for stationary tribes to be.
By a body of water,
With a
like
source of
that.
water.
Wow.
East Texas.
Yes.
Okay, that's really cool.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. So like the Karankawa, the Kato people had amicable relations with Europeans, but the impact of diseases and the, frankly, utter lack of respect of Europeans for Native American tribes and their rights to their own land, it just decimated and displaced another tribe. So the Bullock Museum says, quote, between 1646 and 1816, the Kato population dropped by 95%.
Whoa.
In 1859, the United States government forced 1,050 Texas Katos to relocate to a reservation in present-day Oklahoma, removing them from the homeland they had occupied for more than 1,000 years.
Wow.
Yes.
1,000 years. That's puts into perspective that our country is only
Not very old.
less than 300 years old.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, earlier I said 1858 was a long time ago, but generationally, it's only a few generations
Like
back.
for us, that's like it sounds
Yeah.
like a long time ago.
In-
For people
in
living here
numbers.
before.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
Generationally, like it's not that long ago.
Right.
Yeah. So another unfortunate ending. I'm not sure if they still have a reservation in present day Oklahoma, but that's something that I could
More research.
research could uncover. Yes. So the last two tribes I'll mention for today, they will probably again sound familiar from your Texas history classes, or maybe not
I'm
Lawrence.
gonna learn
Yes.
something.
Maybe not Lawrence. But the Apache and the Comanche tribes.
Okay, I have heard of both of those.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. So the Apaches and the Comanches started out with their homelands in the Great Plains, and then they kind of migrated to Texas because those lands were taken over by Europeans. So they came to Texas in search of more land and more resources. Both tribes often raided villages for supplies and controlled the land, and they hunted bison and claimed new territory as they went across the state. So eventually, in the late 1600s, early 1700s, the Comanche tribe was the one who gained significant control over a lot of the Texas area. So the Comanche tribe was able to live relatively peacefully alongside the Spanish and Mexican governments, but here we are getting into kind of the changing politics of Texas. So in 1836, Texas gained its independence from those governments, and it joined the United States in 1845. So at that point, the Comanches faced extermination by an increasing Anglo population that was intentionally killing their bison herds, strangling their resources, and forcing them into increasingly smaller territories. And by 1875, so about 30 years later, the Comanches had been again displaced from their land and the resources that they controlled for 150 years, and they were relocated to a reservation in what is now Oklahoma.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because, I mean, pretty much after you leave Fort Worth back then, the rest of that territory is, you know, Apache and Comanche territory.
Yes.
I think I would be interested to know a little bit more about Fort Worth's history, but I'm assuming that's why
that is
Fort.
next.
Yeah. Oh,
Yes, that is next. Yeah.
great
So
segue.
the Comanches, they were forced out of Texas, but they still have a very notable place in our history, especially in Fort Worth. And so one story that I think is super interesting, I didn't know before, there was a young girl, age of 9, named Cynthia Ann Parker, and she was abducted from her home in Fort Worth in a log cabin, which you can visit at the Log Cabin Village, which is right by TCU.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, so I've been there several times and I didn't know about this story, but so Cynthia Ann was assimilated into the Comanche culture and eventually gave birth to a son named Quanah Parker, and he became an historic chief in the Comanche tribe.
Wow.
And he was a very influential figure in Fort Worth.
Yeah, I was like, I feel like I recognize that name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So later, Cynthia Ann was taken back by Texas Rangers and she was forced to go back into her life before because at that point she had been abducted so young that she didn't want to leave her family.
Right.
But that was the story of Cynthia Ann. So her son, though, Quanah Parker, he was a valiant warrior and a very highly respected chief of the Comanche tribe. He was the chief that led their unfortunate surrender to a reservation in Oklahoma, but he remained, again, very influential in Texas and Fort Worth. He was very good friends with a man named Samuel Burke Burnett, who was a rancher that leased land from Quanah.
Okay.
So Quanah and the Comanche tribe owned their land, and so Burnett paid him for ranching use.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And side note, Burnett's second wife was Mary Couts Burnett, who was a philanthropist, and she left a majority of her wealth after she died to TCU. And now we have the Mary Couts Burnett Library.
Oh, wow. Fun fact.
Yes.
Yeah.
So fun facts. But Burnett, he established the very first Burnett established the very first annual Fort Worth stock show in 1909. And because they were good friends, Chief Quanah and 38 other Comanche people rode in the first rodeo stock show in their full native regalia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are a lot of historical sites that you can visit around Fort Worth to learn more about Quanah and the Comanche tribe and Native American history in the city. You can find a lot of those resources on the Visit Fort Worth website.
Oh, okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good to know.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had no idea that Fort Worth was very literally the line like between like
it's where the West
like,
begins, baby.
Very, very true. Very well earned nickname.
There
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And the last thing that I'll mention for Native American Heritage Month is that the Fort Worth Independent School District does observe this month. This year, they have curated a display of Native artifacts and student artwork that honors Native culture and heritage. And on their website, you can also find information about the American Indian Education Program. They support students of Native heritage, and they provide several academic, cultural, counseling, and other services.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, well, very cool.
That's all I had for life and culture.
Yeah, I do appreciate it. I was like,
it was very informative.
lots of like reminders for me of Texas history classes. I was like, oh yeah, that too.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yes.
Yeah, and I, as someone who
Yes,
never
it
took
has.
that class in like the 7th, 8th grade, whenever people took it, I appreciate all that information and research you did. I definitely learned a lot.
My pleasure.
Awesome.
Yeah, and just so y'all know, in the future, whenever there's cool events or sites to visit in Fort Worth, we'll be planning to go and cover those events. This weekend, we're going to go get some footage at the Fall Japanese Festival at the Botanic Gardens. You should go if you can. I don't think this is coming out before then.
Well, so I guess I
hope you win.
I hope you went. Yes. But yeah, we'll have some stuff about that.
Awesome.
Yep.
Great.
Well, perfect. I hope you're going. I'm going.
I'm probably gonna. I didn't know about it.
Oh, good. There you
So
go.
See,
yeah.
this is why
This
we
is
do
why
this
we talk.
podcast.
This is
There
the
we go.
importance of
Exactly.
information. Yeah, I'm gonna get more details right after this.
All right. I guess it's time to do the outro. Okay. I was going to do this at the beginning and I forgot, but the FortCast is brought to you by JBJ Management. It's produced and edited by John Christopher Edmonds and written by Austin Hood, Lauren Taylor, and Jonah Murray. You can find all of our works cited and other resources in our show notes. Okay. Well, y'all, we've reached the end. Thank you for tuning in to the FortCast. My name is Jonah, and until next time, remember your worth.
Oh,
I
love
Oh,
it. I
love it.
it.
So good.
There we go. Yes,
There we go.
Give the wink at
for
the
the
end.
for the
Yes.
audio listeners, I winked at the camera, so too bad.
Oh, that's
Awesome.
great. I love that.
All right,
All right.
that's a wrap.
Way to go, team.